Hello, today and welcome to Artisanal Pasta Tools. What we're going to do is teach you a dough for fusilli. It's going to be a two-part video. One is to make the dough for this particular variety of pasta called fusilli. Very popular, made with very simple tools that we will introduce in the second video. The reason we broke it up like that was because we thought it would just be too long to have both the dough making and a demonstration on how fusilli in fact is made. So we thought we'd cut it up. They'll be next door to each other, so you can go from part one, excuse me, from part one to part two very easily. So today I'm going to teach you a traditional dough recipe, and this is an inquiry we get probably more than any other inquiry, is what kind of dough do I make? These doughs are versatile. There is not one particular dough. There is not the dough, but there are several doughs that are all workable and doable and easy to make, and that's what I want you to concentrate on. This is probably an assimilation of the different approaches to making dough for this particular pasta. First of all, it's an impression pasta. We want a stiffer dough, so we use semolina on this dough, finely ground semolina. The other ingredient we use is water, and we also use egg. Now, eggs are optional. This is a southern Italian pasta in which eggs were rarely used with their dough. As things have become more affluent in the South, you'll see many renditions of making fusilli with egg. So what we thought we would do, and as well as double zero pasta, some will equal amounts of semolina and equal amounts of dopo zero. So what we want to do today is show you my rendition, which I think works well. It's all semolina, which gives you the structure, and the chew, which I like with this particular pasta, and eggs, which I think gives you some silkiness, some flexibility in the mouth that I also like. It almost compensates for not having the finer flour. So that's really all you need. I also put in a little olive oil, which I like. I think that makes the dough a little more elastic, lets the gluten strands stretch a little more easily. You don't want to put too much in, because if it gets too loose, then you lose that stretch that gluten provides and we get from wheat flour. So this is a very simple recipe. I use 4 cups of semolina. I get it from Caputo's. They've been making pasta for over 100 years. I highly recommend that you buy that flour. You don't have to have it. You can use all-purpose and it will work well. But semolina, I think, is at the top of the food chain for this particular pasta, as it is for so many impression pastas. You get it in an Italian deli, or you can get it online. And I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, and I'll show you how it works. What we're going to do, I've measured out 4 cups of flour. I use cups, I don't use grams. I think for a lot of people that's confusing. So I'm going to use 4 cups of flour. I'm going to use 2 eggs. Okay, now that we've added the flour and the eggs, we've got to add our tablespoon or 2 of olive oil, which I, again, highly recommend. Keeps your dough a little moist, too. I don't put salt in it. I'm not going to tell you that not to put salt in it, but salt tends to tighten the dough. I don't find it necessary, because when I cook the dough in water, I'm going to put a lot of salt in that boiling water. I find that's much more effective than when I put salt into my pasta. I don't see it serving any purpose, but if you feel comfortable doing it, probably most people do, I just don't see the need for it, in as much as my water is highly salted. Okay, so now what we should do is we'll cut into the process of the mix. You can see how that works. Now we're going to mix the ingredients. I use my hands. I use one hand to keep one free. And just gently mix. The other thing is that I think is important, and I would highly recommend it, but again, these are choices that you make. I love a bowl. I think a bowl keeps your board nice and clean. It works well. It gives you a perimeter, a natural perimeter to keep your flour in. I use a bowl that's about 13 inches wide and about 4 to 6 inches high. I find it's a dedicated bowl. I bought this bowl probably 6-7 years ago, and I just feel they're very, very wise to use. But you can use a board, certainly, and I have used a board frequently. Now, you gradually add your water in. Now, I would recommend that you warm your water, certainly not hot, but keep it warm. It relaxes all the strands and I think makes the process go a little easier. Just gradually. You have to work the dough. Just work it with one hand. It's really not difficult. You know, all of these ingredients, this is why I say people who obsess about grams and this and that, always realize that the weather conditions can impact the amount of water, the amount of flour that you need. So that's why I don't really obsess about it. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of great cooks use grams, but I just find for the general vernacular, this is much more effective. Okay. As you can see, more water has to be. We've had about 100-degree weather, so that's one of those instances where it doesn't work, but you just keep a little extra water there. And you'll see it kind of coming together. Well, my theory of the dough here in a bowl being less messy doesn't look like it's working out, does it? Okay. You can see it. Now it's starting to come. You see how it's getting kind of a little bit crumbly and it's starting to kind of get together. It's starting to be a little bit more sticky. These are not high water content flours, let's say like a pizza where you have a much moister flour dough. But or for bread for that matter, where moistness and stickiness is actually something that you want. You want a nice dough that comes together nicely. Now at this point, you can see how this is sticking? You see how nice that's coming together? That means the water is probably just perfect. Okay, now that looks maybe a little sticky now, or may even look a little dry, depending on how you're looking at it. But when we get this pretty much together in here, and we start kneading it, you'll see how nice it comes together. Okay. I also recommend that you always put a little towel. Now we're going to go to 2 hands. Always put a little towel underneath. I see sometimes these folks are mixing their dough in a bowl, and the bowl is banging, and for the life of me, I don't quite understand that. All it takes is a little flour, preferably dampen your towel. Any linen towel is fine, kitchen towel is fine, and that'll further prevent any kind of slipping. I didn't dampen this towel, but you see it still works well because I'm going to be using the board and I don't want a lot of moisture on that board as I give the final roll to this pasta. So you see how it's coming together? See, that's all it is. There's no magic to this. This will a little work, but that's fine. I'm showing you the most fundamental way of doing this. Of course, you can do it in a mixer. You can do it in the blender. The blender is probably the easiest of all, assuming you have a good blender. I do, but I just think that it's nice to show the fundamentals. And this is the fundamental technique. You get this technique down, then you control the narrative. And by the way, whenever you use semolina, it is a hard pasta, as most of you know, a hard flour. Dopo Zero is a very soft flour, so it tends to be a little stiffer and a little more difficult to mix. The top of the food chain in terms of difficulty is granular semolina, which you will find in extruded pasta. But they need that high structure to hold that pasta together as it's being extruded. So here you go. Now you see this is starting to pretty much come together. That's almost perfect. Now this dough is going to have to hydrate like all doughs have to hydrate when we're finished here. Some people feel comfortable using a glove. I think it's really important that you keep your hands very clean and your work area very clean, which we always attempt to do. So you just need this a few minutes, as I'm doing. We're going to do this in real time. I hope you have the patience to see it through, because I think these steps are important in the transition from flour to crumble to what you see here. Now, it's kind of a rough formation, but it's there. It's there. Now what we'll do, well, this represents almost all the kneading you need. That gluten is coming together. You see how nice that is? Starting to stretch. That's the magic of wheat flour. If you had corn flour in here, if it was corn flour rather than wheat flour, this would just fall apart. Can't get the stretch. Wheat is the only flour, or almost the only flour. Certainly our flour has a measurable amount of the stretch, the gluten. Okay, so we are pretty much where we want to be with this. Now we'll take it out in our surface here, which will be easy. We'll just put that aside. Our bowl. Take our towel out. We'll put our bowl over here. Put a little water. You see how easy the cleanup is? That's exactly why I enjoy the bowl. Okay? Even the dish towel, all it has to do is be shook a tad and shaken a tad, and it'll be fine. Okay, now, what I want to do here is just take you to the final process. So you see how ready? If you can see the texture, it's starting to smooth out. It's already starting to hydrate, and that's what you want. And now, look at that, how nice. Look at that, just in a matter of 5 or 6 minutes. See the difference in the texture? Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Now what you want to do here is probably put a little flour. Well, again, we'll keep our board nice and clean. Now, one of the beauties of making pasta is that you can freeze this dough and it will be just as good as the day you made it. Now, all you have to do, put a saran wrap on it. I like to put it in a Pyrex bowl. And this will stay beautiful for 2-3 months. Or you can put it in the fridge and use it in a day or two. You don't want, if it has egg in it, if you let it stay in there very long, it will discolor because of the oxidation from the sulfur in the eggs. So there's your product right now. Now, this is 4 cups, which I think is the ideal mix. Can make a dinner for any dinner party for 7-8 people easily. Okay? I cut it up in 4 quarters. Okay? You see that? That's all hydrated. You would never have thought that, as you saw me mixing it, would you get that amalgamation so complete. Okay? And it'll become even finer. Now what I do, I get each one of these, which I always feel is a serving, at least a serving, probably a serving and a half. And I put them in little rounds like that. If you want to make it larger and just make it 2, you can do that. You just kind of tuck it in, give it a little round. Okay. Give it another one. It's just another finish, another little finish on the kneading. And you can see this took just a few minutes. I mean, this is not a difficult thing to do, and it's rewarding. Now, all you have to do is wait about 30 minutes, hour, and it's totally hydrated. My understanding is that some of the pasta schools in Bologna, they will not touch this dough for at least 18 to 24 hours. They want that dough totally relaxed, so when they roll it out, there won't be any resistance at all. Now, if you were doing it in a professional setting where volume was absolute and times up, it's probably, who would know better than they. But an hour in domestic use is all that you really need. So we put a little towel on it, let it relax, and good to go. Now the next step, of course, over here would be to get some saran wrap, wrap each ball, put them in the refrigerator if you're not going to use them right away. And if you aren't going to use them right away, then put them in a plastic wrap, put them in another container. I highly recommend, if you have a food saver, to put them in a food saver and vacuum pack them, and this thing will go on for 3 months and it'll be just as good as new. And believe me, we don't advertise on our site except our own products. So anything that I recommend is not out of self-interest, it's out of what I feel is best for the process. So thank you very much. The next video will take us to the dough that has been hydrated, and we will show you how to make that ever popular fusilli. Okay, thank you.